Hey folks, this is another video in a series that aspires to teach Google Apps Script fundamentals to beginners. This next run of lessons is going to be focusing on the DriveApp portion of Google Apps Script. This is going to allow you to organize files, extract files, move files, create files, manage folders, all that type of stuff. If you are new to programming, I'd encourage you to watch my fundamentals video. You're going to need to understand arrays, specifically two-dimensional arrays, as well as for loops. I'm going to encourage that you have a project folder. Because we are working with folders and files, you're going to want to set up some directories so that you can move things around and experiment with some of the principles that we're going to be reviewing. So I'm in a folder called DriveApp, and within DriveApp, I have a project folder. So I have a couple, file types in here and folders with files in them so that I can work through folders and subfolders. So we're going to begin in our parent folder, which for me is DriveApp. I'm going to navigate to the New button. I'm going to go to More, and then I'm going to open up a Google Apps Script project. This is an unbound app script, which means that it has not been created from another Google file type, such as Sheets, Documents, Slides, Drawings, etc. We're getting a prompt on screen that is alerting us that anybody who has access to the folder that this project is being stored in will be able to access the app script file. That's okay for me, so I'm going to be creating the script. We're going to begin by changing the title of our project. You can call it whatever you want to. I'm going to call mine DriveApp. We're going to navigate to the Files module, where we will be creating a new script file. The focus of this lesson is accessing all of our Drive files. So we're going to call this a_access all_files. We're going to hit enter. We'll change the name of our function to be called Drive Files with a capital F. We're going to save our project, navigate to line 2, hit enter once, add 2 slashes for a comment, and now we will access all Drive files. We're going to hit enter and tab. We're going to declare a variable called my_D drive, and we're going to set that equal to D DriveApp. So every lesson in this series is going to be working with methods and functions from the DriveApp library. If you would like to review some of those options, after DriveApp, you can enter a dot, and then this will give you an auto-populated menu with all of the methods and functions that are available to you through DriveApp. These are not all of the methods and functions that are available to you, but they are opening up a tree which has nested functions within them or branching functions and methods within them that open up to you as you start to look to take specific actions. So for our purposes, we are going to use driveapp.getFiles. We'll have an open parentheses. We are not going to be passing any arguments to this function, so we're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard. We're going to add a semicolon, and we're going to hit enter twice. We're going to hit the left arrow on our keyboard twice, and then we're going to add 2 slashes for a comment. We're going to log the output of my drive. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and then we're going to do capital L logger.log, open parentheses, and then we're going to pass the my drive variable that we created on line 4. We're going to add a semicolon. We're going to save our project, and then we're going to hit run. At this time, we're going to be asked to provide authorization so that DriveApp can access our drive. So you're going to select your email account. You're going to get an aggressive warning that tells you that Google hasn't verified this app. We're going to select advanced, and then we are going to use the bottom prompt that says go to whatever your project title name is, and then the parenthetical unsafe. The reason that Google is using this vernacular is because they don't know what the code is that you're trying to run. It has not been submitted to Google, so they want you to be very aware that if you run this script or if you allow access to this to DriveApp, you have the person who wrote the code has the ability to see and download all your Google Drive files. This is fine. We're not going to be doing anything malicious, but the reason that you're getting this prompting is because they don't want a bad faith actor to take advantage of you. We're going to select allow. And once we provide authorization, our execution log shows us that the result of my drive is a file iterator. So anytime that you attempt to access files or folders via DriveApp, there's a high probability that you are going to get a iterator back, which means that you have to loop through the files in order to access them. So you're not going to be given a data structure, you're going to be given this file iterator. So the DriveApp documentation encourages you to use a while loop. So we are going to be reviewing while loops. We're going to resume on line 7. We're going to hit enter twice, left arrow twice, 2 slashes for a comment. We're going to create an empty array to store the files. We're going to hit enter and tab. We're going to declare a variable called array, which will be set equal to square brackets. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we're going to add a semicolon. The reason that we're creating an empty array is because when we loop through our files, we're going to extract additional points of metadata that we are going to want to associate to the files. That will allow us to start to work with them. And by passing it to an array, we have the ability to create a structure that will allow us to loop through them or to modify them or send them other places. Because the file names alone through a loop is not as malleable as a way to work with the data as when we have them in a two-dimensional array or an array. And the reason that we want an array or a two-dimensional array is because that's how data is structured within Google Sheets. So in the event that you want to send any of your file types into a Google Sheet in order to look at or organize them, then you're going to need to pass it into a two-dimensional array so that the data is structured in the same way that Google Sheets accepts data structures. We're going to resume on line 10 by hitting enter twice and the left arrow on our keyboard twice. We're going to add 2 slashes for a comment where we will say loop through the iterator variable. We're going to hit enter and tab. So we're going to be using the while loop. So we're going to type out while and we'll have an open parentheses. Within while, we're going to reference our myDrive variable from line 4, and then we're going to be using a dot method. While provides you with 3 methods that you can use. We are going to be using hasNext. We're going to have an open parentheses that takes a Boolean value, but we are not going to be entering anything in there. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice, and then we're going to hit space. We're going to enter in curly brackets. We're going to hit enter, 2 slashes for a comment, and now we are going to save the files to a variable called file. I'm going to hit enter and tab. So we're going to use that var character, and then we're going to create a variable called file, and we're going to set that equal to myDrive.next with an open parentheses. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we're going to add a semicolon. So the way that while works is that as long as the iterator, in this case myDrive, has something come after it, it will continue. And it keeps going until there is nothing left. The same thing happens with next. So by saving our files to a variable, we have the ability to access them in order to extract additional points of data out of them. So on line 15, we're going to resume by hitting enter once, adding 2 slashes for a comment, and now we're going to log out the file variable. We're going to hit enter and tab. We'll do logger.log, open parentheses, file. We're at the right arrow on our keyboard, and we're going to add a semicolon. And we're going to hit run. So you'll see that the first thing that pops up is our file iterator, which is coming from my drive. And now we're starting to get a long list of all of the files that are in my drive. So all of these are literally every single file that exists in my drive. So these are populating based upon last updated date. So if you wanted to see that, we're going to go into our logger.log, and I'm going to add a plus symbol and a space, and then I'm going to add single quotes with a space, and I'm going to add a solid bar. I'm going to hit space. So we have plus symbol, single quote, space, straight bar, space, single quote. We're going to hit right after the single quote, and we're going to add a plus symbol, and then we're going to reference file.get last updated, and we're going to have a open parentheses there. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard so that we're at the end of the line. So we're after that semicolon, and we're going to hit run. And now we have the output again where we are getting the file names, and then we are separating them by a bar, and then we are getting a date time that is set in Eastern Standard Time because that's where I'm located. And if I scroll all the way to the top, you'll notice that DriveApp is the last one that was most recently updated, starting on September 4th in 1744. And then you can kind of see going down, all these files here are September 4th, right? So keep your eye trained here. They're all September 4th. Then we have September 2nd. So we are identifying that the way that the get files method works is by sorting from most recent date to oldest date follows. So I'm going to comment out my logger file there because we don't need it anymore. I'm going to hit enter twice. I'm going to hit the left arrow on my keyboard twice. I'm going to add 2 slashes for a comment. So we have our empty array. But if we want to work with a set of data, like an array of data, right? So like if we want to pull out the file and we want to pull out the file ID and we want to pull out the file type, we want to have them associated with one another so that we have a name with an ID with a type. So in order to do that, we are going to be creating another empty array called file array. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to declare a variable of file, capital A, array. And we're going to set that equal to square brackets. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter twice, and then we're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we are going to use the push method in order to push the file, ID, and type to the file array. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to call file array dot push open parentheses, and we're going to begin by just pushing file. And when you reference your file variable, the thing that is mydrive.next, you will return the name. So we're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard once. We're going to add a space, and we're going to do 2 slashes where we'll say file name. We're going to hit enter, and then we're going to reference file array dot push open parentheses, and then we're going to reference that file variable once more, and we're going to use a dot method. So while you're in file dot, you can review all the things that you can get from here. So you can get the created date, you can get a description if it exists, you can get IDs, you can get last updated, get the owner, the parents, the resource, tons of stuff is in here, right? So you can review all this stuff to see if any of it is interesting to you. What I think is exceptionally important is extracting the ID. So we're going to do get capital ID. And we're going to have an open parentheses there. We're going to hit the right arrow twice, and then we're going to hit space. And we're going to have 2 slashes for a comment, and we'll say file ID. We're going to hit enter, and we're going to use file array one more time. We're going to do dot push, open parentheses, file dot get capital M MIME type or meme type. I think it's MIME type. And we'll use an open parentheses. So this will tell you whether it's like a spreadsheet or a doc or a deck or a drawing or anything like that. So we're going to hit space, and we're going to say file type. So what's happening when we do file array dot push is these 3 things get pushed into that file array. So that empty array, those empty square brackets, the push method is adding them to it. So every time the while loop runs, we are going to push each line into the file array in a comma separated fashion, right? So anytime you use push, it adds the thing that you're pushing to an array, adding a comma or just injecting it in there. So anytime that you're pushing these 3 things in there like that, you'll get them in comma separated order so that we have an array for each file. So we'll have the file name, the ID, and the type as its own array. We're going to resume on line 25 by hitting enter twice. And we are going to add 2 slashes for a comment. And now we're going to push the file array to the array. So that array on line 10 is empty. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to say array dot push, open parentheses, file capital A array. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we're going to add a semicolon. So after the file ID and type are pushed into the empty file array, that single array is being pushed into the empty array on line 10. So every time the while loop runs, those file arrays are being pushed into the array the same way that these file get ID, get MIME type are being pushed into the file array. So in case it's not clear, I'm going to open up the execution log. So hypothetically, instead of this being a name separated by a straight line or a straight bar and then a date and time, if we use the push method, then they would be comma separated and they would be in square brackets. And by doing that, we are then getting lines into arrays. And when we push an array into another array, we get a 2-dimensional array, where we have the first dimension being the array number, and then the second dimension being the individual elements of that array. And that will now allow us to work with our drive files so that if we want to create conditional logic for them to only include a certain file type or a certain name or a certain ID or what have you, we have the data structured in a way that allows us to work with that. So what I'm going to do just to make this a little bit more clear is I'm going to select line 25. So I'm going to go to the end of line 25. I'm going to hit enter twice. I'm going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and I'm going to log out the file capital A array. I'm going to hit enter and tab, and I'm going to do logger dot log open parentheses file capital A array. I'm going to hit the right arrow on the keyboard, and I'm going to add a semicolon. I'm going to go to line 32, which is the end of the while loop, and I'm going to hit enter twice, left arrow twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and now we're going to log out the array. I'm going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to do logger.log, open parentheses, array. I'm going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard. We're going to add a semicolon. We'll hit save, and now we're going to run. So you can see that we are starting to get a bunch of arrays. And the reason that we can tell that these are arrays is because they have square bracket at the beginning and a square bracket at the end. And when I open up my console log, so there's a little bit more that we can see, you can see that the output is too large because of how many files I have. But we have a very strong indication that our push method has worked as we intended because we have two square brackets at the beginning. And then we have square brackets with commas separating each of our arrays, which is a strong indication that we have successfully built out a two-dimensional array so that if we wanted to work with all of our DriveApp files, we have the ability to do so. Additionally, you can see that our while loop is producing single arrays, one-dimensional arrays, because we have the file name, and then a comma, and then the file ID, and then a comma, and then we have the file type. So you can see that we have a bunch of spreadsheets here, and then we have a document. And if we scroll down into our two-dimensional array, you can see that we have a couple drawings and a form and a presentation. So we have a very substantive data set here that would allow us to continue modifying, sorting, working through all of our DriveApp files.
I hope you found this video helpful. If you'd like to continue following along with this series, please check out the playlist linked in the description.